Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Genre Equality Podcast. I'm Hidzir.
I'm Hardy.
I'm Isa.
This month, I think it's the first time ever, right, that we've been forced to record remotely.
Yep.
Yep.
I hope the audio is okay with you guys. We're recording on this new thing called Zencaster, so hopefully that's all well and good. Like most of the rest of the world, we're all stuck inside, so we can't see each other's faces. But we're still gonna keep the show going on because everyone's doing podcasts and chats online these days. So why not us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we have like lots to talk about this month, man. One of our favorite animes just ended its fourth season, My Hero Academia. Me and Hadi are going to be talking about a new David Simon show called The Plot Against America. There's devs, there's specials from elsewhere. There is a ton of stuff to be talking about. So I mean, let's get into it with probably the biggest title that we're going to be talking about this month. It is the fourth season of Boku no Hero. My Hero Academia, of course, for you English-speaking folks. How did you guys find this? Let's kick it off with Isa, man. What do you think about My Hero Academia Season 4?
Oh wow, we've raved about this for 4 seasons now. Pretty
Yeah.
much. I do think that just in the way that it's decided to frame the arcs, right, in this particular season, we did get a lot of they front loaded it with a lot of good stuff, right? So we had the whole what do you call it, arc?
Overhaul.
The whole arc with overhaul, right? And that
Yeah.
took up the bulk of the series, and then we had a much smaller arc with Gento, kind of like a filler thing before we kind of move into anything different. Yeah, I mean, like overall arc, as we've kind of talked about before, is a fan favorite, right? In
Yeah.
particular, everybody seems to like that because you have a very kind of compelling villain and a lot of kind of growth arc that involved many of our favorite characters throughout, and it's great. The action is great. Probably outside of the recent movie itself, one of the best fight scenes that they've presented to us so far. Some major kind of like character arc growths for all of our little hero friends.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's very little to kind of like say outside that, and it's been pretty outstanding. I did wish that they ended it on the overhaul arc instead of like continuing it with the kind of filler arc with Gento and all of that. But I mean, it's understandable given like they have to kind of fill it out before they proceed with the next season.
Yeah, man. What about you, Hadi? Have you seen Season 4 of My Hero Academia yet?
Yeah, I just finished up the festival arc with Gentle Criminal and all that. Yeah, it was kind of a different tone and excitement from the first arc, I guess. This was a bit more introspective, I guess, where a lot of the students are taking note of the crazy year that they had, especially those involved in the overall arc, especially those who were fighting against the Yakuza.
Yeah.
The Work Hero program, right?
Yeah, so it was interesting to just all of them just taking a breath, and like not having to be in peril again for the 100th time in their first year. So it was nice just to see them being kids, and coming up with this extravagant dance sequence thing,
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that thoroughly, even though I do agree that it is a bit anticlimactic when you compare to how insane the overhaul arc was.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed the relationship that they built with the little girl, especially Midoriya and
Eri.
and Eri
And Lemillion.
and Lemillion. Yeah.
Yes, man.
I feel that is one of the best new relationships in this series,
Yeah.
Oh man, I agree. Did you guys feel? I mean, to me, I felt like Season 4 felt significantly darker than the first 3 seasons.
Yes.
There was a huge sense of high life and death stakes amongst the overhaul arc. All the fights, you never quite knew whether someone was gonna die, whether someone was gonna live, whether someone was gonna lose their powers.
Yep.
I think in general, the fight with Lemillion really was the first time in My Hero Academia, I think, history where one of the good guys really, I thought they were gonna die, for real,
Yeah, because I thought it was either going to be Lemillion or Night Eye, or both of them. But they're not just Night Eye.
Correct lah.
Yeah.
And on the flip side also, after all that was done, I kind of enjoyed also the small breather that we took, a bit lighter in the action. It's kind of focused on a really C-level villain, mostly about gentle criminal and this
La
cute
Brava.
little this cute little concert like school show that they're gonna put on, which is different lah. And then at the end, you kind of setting up next season about how who is the fire guy's name again?
Endeavor.
Endeavor, yeah.
Yeah.
How like Endeavor is gonna take over as the new number one hero in Japan. So I think it hits all the right beats, but I do feel like most My Hero Academia seasons, and I think this is kind of a recurring complaint. It always feels front loaded. Like the first 3 quarters of the season is always like really hype, and then the last quarter feels a bit, I don't know, like out of place lah. I think it happened last season. It happened in season 2.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
It's just the positioning. Like I felt that they should have started the coming season right with this festival, and then move on into the meat of the story.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing lah. Like last season should have ended with the forest arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you want them to end on a high note, basically.
Yeah, where all the traditional way, where all the action and all is right at the back end of the series.
I guess
like
so.
gradually build up to a climax.
Correct, yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with how the manga has been written, right? And just like it's always like big arc, small arc, big arc, small arc.
Yeah.
Traditionally has worked for a lot of anime, like typical shonen anime, like your Naruto's, your Bleach, your Hunter x Hunter. All of these have that kind of like breathing space in between, but because it's a long running series, they don't take breaks between seasons. It works a lot better that way. So I do feel like it's kind of a logistical issue, and I'm not sure if there will be an opportunity for them to adjust that. But I mean I understand, like, given this whole new hero ranking thing and the setup with like the introduction of Hawk into the anime, and all the top ranked heroes right now. I mean, it's understandable since that comes off immediately comes off the back of the festival arc. So I don't know if they can change that necessarily, but hopefully, I do prefer what you guys have suggested for sure.
Yeah. I like you said, like it's a direct and almost a bit too faithful adaptation of the manga where they follow beat for beat, right?
Yep.
So they're basically taking like X number of issues, and this is going to be season 4, season 5, season 6. So you can't really gradually ramp up the stakes to like the big finale lah.
Yeah.
So it's not something they can address, I think. But that being said, like I still thought that this was a great season. I enjoyed everything. I enjoyed the light beats. I enjoyed the heavy beats, the darkness, and everything lah.
Yeah, the second arc for me was very wholesome, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Like, even the Gentle Criminals arc, I mean, his introduction and his entire thing wasn't so dark. It was a lot of very like easy breezy kind of feelings, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, that's really the roots of the show. Like, it is a young adult show, I guess, a young adult anime. So, and also that arc only works. Like you were saying that you should like restructure that arc, right?
Perhaps.
But I think the arc only works after Overhaul because the arc was meant for Eri.
Correct. I agree. So that's why I said that it should be next season.
Oh, right.
Like the beginning of next season where you have the Gentle arc and then the Eri getting to know Eri and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But, right, I kind of like that they ended it with Eri smiling and being happy and all that stuff.
Yeah, and like seeing Bakugo like so invested in like being a musician, right?
Yeah, so there's a great character growth there also, you see, which I enjoyed lah.
Yeah,
I know it's always been kind of one arc, and I enjoy seeing Endeavor trying to step up as well. He also feels vulnerable at this time.
Correct,
he does. Yeah, and I mean, like it's going to be super interesting because Hawk is a fascinating kind of character study of like a protege, right? Essentially. And that's going to play very interestingly as opposed to, where Endeavor is right now and trying to fill All Might's shoes, which he's struggling to because he's starting to realize like being number one is a lot more than just, being the top of the ranks. What does it truly mean to be the number one hero, to be a symbol of peace, right? So yeah, we'll see where this goes. I do. Okay, question. Did both of you end up watching the Heroes Rising movie in the end?
I couldn't find it.
No, yeah, like it was supposed to come to Singaporean theaters, but obviously, like the rest of the world,
Coronavirus.
yeah, our cinemas are shut down. We're locked down at home, and I could find some copies online, but I couldn't find it with English subs.
Ah, right,
So,
right.
so I haven't seen it yet, lah.
Time to learn
Okay.
Japanese.
Well,
Because of COVID-19, right? We're gonna learn Japanese.
Exactly.
yeah.
Best time.
Why not? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyways, my question had to do a lot with like if you guys had seen the movie, right? How did the
Mhm.
placement and the timing of the movie kind of affect what you saw this season, right? Because we get two like massive fights, uh,
Mm.
between what happens in the movie and obviously the fight with Overhaul, one with a much older Midoriya and one with obviously Midoriya as he is right now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if there was any sort of basis of comparison, if it kind of influenced that. Because for me, having watched the movie early this year, right, kind of in the middle of the actual ongoing season,
Yeah.
like it makes me incredibly excited. But the fight, as good as the fight with Overhaul was, it pales in comparison to the fight that they had in the movie.
What's the movie called again?
Is it Heroes Rising?
Okay.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. So yeah, but of course, since you guys haven't seen it yet, maybe we'll save that conversation for a different time when you guys
Sure.
are able to. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because actually, if you guys wanted to hear Isa's review of the movie, like he did it like back in our January episode. So if you wanna get like some initial thoughts, Isa was actually in Japan. He caught the movie. Unfortunately, apparently there were no subtitles, right, when you watched it.
Yeah, there were no subtitles, so I was just going on with my kind of middling Japanese. But
The
even
story
then,
was just pure imagery, right?
yeah, it was just pure imagery. Like you didn't need much. I'm sure I missed out a lot of like great dialogue that I
Mm.
didn't quite understand, but I didn't need it, to enjoy the movie.
That being said, like kind of going back to my earlier point, I would almost rather kind of put off watching the movie until I get to that point in My Hero Academia, because like if I had seen the movie, I feel like the fight with Overhaul wouldn't have seemed as epic, with Eri clinging to his back and him finally being able to go 100 for the first time in the show.
Because
Yeah.
of Eri.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was great.
it felt like this moment that you've been working so hard for, and then you finally got to that moment, and there was this big euphoric cheer. But
Yeah.
if I had seen the movie, I saw him go 100% already with ease. Like, it might have like lessened the impact of that moment, maybe.
Okay. All right. So I can't really offer anything because it's a bit of a spoiler as to how
Yeah.
that turns out. But yeah, I do understand where you're coming from, and I was just curious if you guys have and if it did affect, because it did for me. Like it did bring the Overhaul fight a notch down, just because I know what this these children are capable of as they grow older, right? But yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll save it for a different time when everybody kind of has a chance to watch the movie.
Yeah, man. One slight complaint. I felt like Todoroki was a bit like underserved this season. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't really see much of him except for his remedial training.
With
Yeah.
the kids.
Which was cute. I did
Which was cute.
enjoy those few
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah, Todoroki and Bakugo being the kids left behind in summer school is a bit it's interesting because
They're the
like
best.
the idea is they're the best, right? Like
Yep.
they by just virtue of power level and fighting ability, they're above Midoriya. But like they don't have the hero sensibility yet, like which Midoriya has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think that with Endeavor kind of coming to the forefront with things, we will definitely see a lot more Todoroki in the upcoming season.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that could be partially why.
Todoroki looking worried as he saw his father fighting on TV added like a nice little wrinkle to that family dynamic, because
Yeah.
we've only seen him hating his dad, but I think they're gonna go on some reconciliation thing.
Yep, that's highly likely for sure.
Yeah. Do you guys know if like production has been affected by COVID-19 or anything for the next season?
Not sure.
It is still slated for the summer release next year, so we will see. I mean, like, there's been no news out of the studio at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. I think things in Japan, not really sure how things in Japan are going and how it's affected the studios in particular. It does seem that most of the animes up till January next year are slated to come out on time.
Do you reckon it's because the animators can work at home?
I do think it's possible. that
Interesting.
most of them have kind of offloaded their work to
Mm,
freelancers as well. So I mean, like, not too tapped into like the current industry, what the industry is doing in this time that we're living in.
mm,
But it seems like there are very few delays, as far as I know.
mm-hmm,
So I don't think we will have to wait
mm.
additionally for this to come out.
Because I've been reading a ton of articles about Disney and DreamWorks and how their production hasn't missed a beat at all. The animators are just working from home, and
Yeah.
everything's scheduled to come out on time. Obviously, it's a very different thing for live action shows. Like I mean, one of our like me and Isa's favorite shows, like Better Call Saul, is probably going to be a long time until we see its last season, just
Yeah.
because they're supposed to start production now, and we don't know when they can ever get large groups of people to shoot again. So it's a good thing for animation, but
Mm.
bad thing for live action lah.
Yeah, I mean, like, later on, I'm going to be talking about Ghost in the Shell,
Yep.
which just came out on Netflix. But the only kind of production hiccup that they've hit is that they can't provide dubs for anyone. Yeah, so
Oh,
if you're watching
interesting.
it, they give you a notification before you start the season, and they'll tell you that, oh, there's some audio there's some audio titles that aren't out yet, just because we are prioritizing the safety of our voice actors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice, right? For people to kind of let them know, like, you don't have an English dub, because we want to make sure that we keep these things under control.
Yeah.
So there are instances of delays. I think it's not the full experience for people who watch dubs anyway.
Mm.
But yeah, so hopefully, like, we continue to see a lot more content out of the animation side of things in the
Right.
entertainment world.
Yeah, but I mean, people who watch dubs are lame anyway, so fuck them.
Hey, Donny, you all know that I watch the dubs.
Subs, not dubs.
I'm a proponent of the dubs just because I don't want to read anything. That's why.
No, like Hadi, whenever we talk to Hadi or meet him anywhere, or when he does anything, he's multitasking lah. So if he can't hear it, then it affects
Yeah.
your ability to actually invest in the product.
Yep.
So I get where you're coming from lah. Mostly because you're a busy man.
Yeah. And also because the American dubs for My Hero is really good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
that as well.
I
I've heard
mean,
that as
it's
well.
it's kind of like, do you watch a Studio Ghibli in subs or dubs, right? Because, like,
dubs also. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, because no, that's the thing. Like, Ghibli has amazing dubs,
Yeah.
right? They really, really do. Like, they spend a lot of time making sure the translations are correct, and like making sure that everything kind of syncs up with the frame, and they get great voice actors as well. So whatever allows you to consume the material in a way that you enjoy, I'm gonna leave it to you. But I mean, like, for me personally, like, I much prefer subs, just because, like, it was made for that,
Mm.
I
specifically
understand
to
that
that.
too.
Yeah. So
Of course, and in any ways, even if I watch dubs, even if I watch English shows, my subs are on anyway because I just want to understand better lah.
yeah, for sure.
So I always read while I watch. So that's just my thing for me
Mm.
personally lah. Anyways, how would you guys rate this latest season of My Hero Academia, and any final thoughts?
I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I
Yeah.
had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fun with it. Yeah, I can't wait for next season.
Yeah.
Same. I'll rate it an 8 out of 10 as well. What about you, Hadi? Sorry, Isa.
Yeah, same here. 8 out of 10. It's good stuff. Like, it's been My Hero is something that I consistently look forward to watching every week, right? And in
Yeah.
this day and age of, like, being able to binge watch shit,
Mm.
it's very different experience, right? Something that I haven't had in a while, sort of
Mm.
like, say, maybe Westworld, or
Things like that lah.
things of like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. I enjoy watching it week to week as well. I watch it like on Saturday night, like I will check all the streaming sites at like 1 a.m. to see whether it's up or not. I will keep refreshing. It's one of those shows that like makes me very excited to watch it lah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, man.
Yeah, definitely. Next thing we're gonna go into is wow, it's a show called The Plot Against America.
Oh no.
And for a lot of people, right, I don't know whether you consider this genre.
It
I'm
is.
almost cheating a bit because it feels so ungenre like
It
the
does.
Plot Against America, but it is alternate history.
So it's
Yeah.
genre.
Like if we review The Men in the High Castle, right? How is this different plot wise? Just not in terms of tone or style, but plotting, right? It's the same as the Man in High Castle, so why not the plot against America, right?
More or less.
More or less, yeah. So I feel like I do feel like I'm cheating by putting this in, but I think we are justified in doing so.
We are. It's alt history, alt history genre.
Definitely. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar, this is by acclaimed author and journalist David Simon. He created and showran a number of brilliant shows since he came to television. Like The Wire, The Deuce, Generation Kill, Treme, lots of really really amazing shows that follows a lot of very real world things. His most famous work, like you mentioned, The Wire, told the story about Baltimore on all levels. It followed cops and drug dealers and dock workers and politicians and teachers and children and journalists. So it really lets us understand the socio-economic ecosystem of a city in a very humanist way.
Yes.
And he co-created that series, The Wire, with a guy named Ed Burns. And he hasn't worked with Ed Burns since The Wire.
Since The Wire, yeah.
And they have rethemed to adapt Philip Roth's prescient novel, The Plot Against America, for HBO.
Yeah.
Okay, so just let me quickly lay out the premise if you're unfamiliar. It's a 6-part mini-series. It imagines an alternate history in which the United States turns towards fascism during the World War II. It's told through the eyes of a working-class Jewish family in New Jersey, and we follow, their country engulfed in anti-Semitism as this aviation hero / xenophobic populist Charles Lindbergh defeats Franklin Roosevelt in the 1940 presidential election. If you aren't a history buff, right, like me and Hadi, Lindbergh in real life was running on an America First policy, was an admirer of Hitler and sought to keep US out of World War II. He was an isolationist. So in this story, after Lindbergh wins, he embarks on a program of government-sponsored Jewish resettlement. Immediately, the topicality is apparent due to the story's parallel with Donald Trump. And maybe that's why this was the best time to finally bring Roth's book to the screen, because the world that he invented and what's happening to contemporary America is hard to ignore. You have a demagogic president who openly expresses admiration for a foreign dictator. You have a surge of right-wing nationalism and isolationism. You have polarization. You have false narratives. You have xenophobia, the demonization of others. Lindbergh's political rise, it plays out a lot like Trump. And because at first he's satirized by his critics, right? They believe that he will sink. But he proves immune to it. He's labeled an airplane pilot with opinions, the same way that Trump was labeled a reality show star, and is treated as a disqualifier. People didn't take him seriously, But David Simon and Philip Roth, in interviews given, right, want to make sure that Donald Trump is not Lindbergh, because Lindbergh, for all his flaws, is a legitimately great man. Like, Lindbergh was a war hero. He's brave. He's extremely well-spoken and extremely intelligent. He's infinitely more credible than Trump is, right?
In a weird way, yes.
Yeah. I mean, they're both hateful people, but this guy can lead a country.
Yeah.
And so, given your political understanding of what's happening today and what happened in the 1940s, and your familiarity with David Simon and his past work, what did you think about The Plot Against America, Hadi?
Okay, so this takes place in the alternative 1940s election.
Not so alternative, but yeah.
I mean, because the guy that ran against Roosevelt during this period of time was another businessman, not Lindbergh.
Correct, yeah.
But Lindbergh was very outspoken, very isolationist. All this is right, lah. So but what happens when, I mean, it is interesting to just point it and say, oh, look, it's like an allegory of Trump, lah. But it's a lot more sinister than that also.
Yeah.
Trump is, I mean, as much as he's a moron and, a lot of things that we can say about him for the next hour, Lindbergh has this kind of sinister appeal because of the fact that there is fascism still alive in the world. Where you have,
I mean, it still is.
No, but not in the way that it was back in the 1940s with an entire country, right? Where
Hitler,
you have Hitler, lah. And he's, I mean, spoiler alert, I guess he's elbowing, him just shaking the hands of Hitler and all that stuff. It was such a image that just didn't make sense, especially if you knew America, if you hear the stories of America in the 40s and all that, where there was still a lot of weird racial issues and all that, But this just emptied up to 100. And what I loved about David Simon's, about this show is the fact that it's slow burns. Right, it introduces the world to you, and it slowly shows the moral decay that happens in these 6 episodes. And how how your entire life can just turn around in an instant. I love the political intrigue between, like, race traitors like the rabbi,
Bagelsdorf.
Yeah, and like the naivety of like Winona Ryder's character. I can't remember her name.
To a certain extent, Bagelsdorf was naive as well.
Also, yeah, definitely. He was even more naive because of the fact that he felt that his words were powerful enough to change the heart of a man who clearly is racist, lah.
Yeah. He's sort of deluding himself.
Correct. And and as the thing progresses, you see how he's being more pushed aside. His words are no longer as important and all that. And you see that rise of anti-Semitism through the episodes, and it just got your heart pumping. Like, it's not like high action or anything like that, but it just got you worried for the characters that we are introduced to, and just like how the Wire, it goes down to the family, the nucleus of the family and all that stuff. Same thing here, where we explore just on the boots on the ground now, what's happening within these Jewish communities and how they are affected by something as sinister as a president who is clearly anti-Semite, and whose cabinet has Mr. Ford, who another very, very prominent Nazi supporter.
Correct. Yeah.
In reality, though, to be fair, Lindbergh did because Roosevelt was incredibly popular. Lindbergh actually went away from the isolationist thing, lah.
Lindbergh actually only did that after
Pearl Harbor. Yeah, exactly. So because of Pearl Harbor, in this case, I think Pearl Harbor never happened.
Okay, so
right?
this is adaptation of the book. In the book, right? Pearl Harbor was the thing that changed everything back to normal. Like people like finally saw that we have to get into this war, etc., etc. What David Simon does is smarter, I feel, by not letting it happen. So it creates a very ambiguous future for this world. Things don't just turn back to normal just because of a speech by the First Lady, because of Pearl Harbor. There is an uncertain future for these people, and much like us, because I think they want you to have this sense of uncertainty with America going into the election year this year, and the show ends with an election as well, but you don't find out who won.
Right? So the guy who took over was the presidential candidate that actually ran against Roosevelt and lost.
In real life, yeah, definitely. What I like most about The Plot Against America is that it's not like The Man in High Castle or even The Handmaid's Tale. It is very much a parlor drama. Like, it's a drama that's set inside one living room, from the point of view of one family and how it affects them. Like, I discussed this with Hadi a few days ago about how, like, when I watch The Wire, I almost laugh when I think about other cop shows about how cartoonish they are. And when I watch Generation Kill, I laugh about how cartoonish like other war stories are. So when I watch this, right, and this is Simon's first attempt at like a alt history genre kind of thing. And I almost laugh at how cartoonish other dystopian tales are. It almost feels too black and white, and from this point of view, you see everything through a very humanist lens, and even the Jewish characters that agree with Lindbergh, right, and support him, and as misguided as they are, like, you understand why.
Yes, correct.
Like the Levin's teenage son, as annoying as he is, sees Lindbergh as a war hero. Winona Ryder's character falls in love with Rabbi Bagelsdorf, who's like the token Jew, and you can see how they're like seduced by the power of being in an administration such as that.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. But like, it's never just thoughtful debate about policy or speechifying like Aaron Sorkin does. Like David Simon really likes to show us the very human aspect of flawed institutions, and how those pressures cause us to think what we think and do what we do. It's human failing in the end, and institutional failing, and he does the same here. which I think it makes it a much more nuanced and infinitely richer dystopian tale.
Mm-hmm.
And it's understated. Its understated scenes kind of create like this microcosm of larger scale portraits of sea change in the political landscape.
Yeah.
And I think this is an excellent show, man.
Yeah, I mean, and it shows you again that, it's not that the majority are racist, it's just that the majority is quiet. And you could tell here, that they felt like they were left alone, the Jews becoming more isolated from the rest of the society or forcefully integrated into it. It's fascism at a very weird, like Darth Sidious before he revealed himself, when he was the Chancellor.
A little bit like it's not as like dramatic as like the vicious scenes of rape in The Handmaid's Tale, or or it's not like Nazi tanks like in the streets of America, like in The Man in High Castle.
Correct.
But it's better because it's realer. The oppression happens gradually.
And
it happens
scarier.
Yeah, it happens through rationalizations and double talk. And and you get to see very slowly streets are empty of Jewish children. There are swastikas defacing Jewish graves. Police knowingly nod at violent counter protesters, which is kind of what happened in like Charlottesville, for example. The racism is becoming scary and more open and more casual because you have permission from the top guy.
The top guy says, "Okay, man."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not sensationalistic as much as it is subtle. Like even like one of the early episodes that showed the Levin family being kicked out of a hotel, right?
Yeah.
So that really is when like things kick into high gear.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, Hadi, have you ever read the book?
No, that's why you told me about the book and all that, and I can't wait to actually read it.
Yes, the book is very interesting because it plays out as like a biography of Philip Roth's youth, just in an alternate history. So it comes from a very child's eye point of view. So you don't know where his father is coming from, you don't know where his uncle is coming from, his mother, and all of that. And what Simon wanted to do was kind of like expand it a bit, and I think he did a great job in letting us know where the fascist sympathizers come from, and why, even though they're Jewish, they might think the way they think. His uncle who went to Canada to join World War II, like what was he feeling? And the whole disagreement between the uncle and his father about, his father is obviously very outspoken, but all he does is, you saw the last episode, right?
Yeah.
When they got into that big fight at the dinner table, and he correctly calls him out, like, all you do is like sit in front of your radio and complain. I went off to fucking war. So I actually did something. It's very interesting, like what would you do in times of crisis?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there isn't an allegorical distance that genre usually affords here, because it just feels so real and sadly true to today.
Yeah, okay. It's true.
Yeah,
and that's so scary.
Yeah, man. You got any like concluding thoughts before you give your rating?
David Simon again just blows this out of the water. I felt that this mini series is great. I mean, I don't think that's gonna. I mean, it's a mini series, right? So that's it, right? Yeah. Really well told, really well acted. Everything done to kind of really nice polish lah. I really thoroughly enjoyed this series.
Yeah. I thought all the acting was superb as well. I thought Winona Ryder like gives one of her best performances I've seen in a long time. Yeah. Like I know like she's on Stranger Things and she's a big part of there lah, but that you don't really see meaty acting from Winona Ryder there. Yeah, so she's fantastic here, and I think that this is a very smart, unsimplistic good versus evil narrative. Like it's very sharp, and the ending is darker than the novel even. So this is fantastic. I think it is an 8.5 out of 10 for me. What about you, Hadi?
I'll give it an 8.5 too. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
Well deserved.
Super highly recommended show, man. Yep. Next, Isa Fung will be joining me. We'll be talking about a new show called Devs.
Oh my!
It's also a mini series. It comes from writer and filmmaker Alex Garland, who has kind of become known for this pensive, mind-bending sci-fi movies, just rooted in just enough real-world science to kind of leave you hanging on on the ledge of a full-blown existential crisis, like, I mean, I know he started out with like 28 Days Later and Dread, but his own movies, his directorial movies, like the stunning AI drama Ex Machina, and 2018's Annihilation, are all very like ambitious and abstract and mind-melting.
Yep.
With Devs, Garland makes the first time ever leap into TV with another challenging slice of what the fuckery. It's an 8-hour limited series, and Garland has been clear that this is a contained story with an ending. It gives the writer-director kind of a larger cinematic landscape to meditate on his sci-fi filmmaking fascinations. And in keeping, Devs feels like a creative cousin to both films. In terms of craftsmanship, Dev expands on a lot of the techniques of Annihilation. Embracing experimental imagery and sound design to unnerve and disorient and immerse the viewer, while conceptually it shares Ex Machina's fascination with our rapidly advancing real world technology. And if you've seen the finale of Drafts, it's purposefully intended as a spiritual companion piece to that movie, Ex
Yep.
Machina and what Death turns out to be. So this show is very beautiful, breathtaking filmmaking, first of all. And it's very paranoid, and it's so paranoid because it feels very, a bit like Plot Against America. It feels very close to home, in a sense that the technology isn't so wild and out there, like big data is already kind of doing this to us.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Devs upon having seen all 8 episodes?
Well, overall, I did enjoy it, right? I mean, I have a few bones to pick here and there. I do feel like Alex Garland is starting to set into his own kind of aesthetic, his own kind of aesthetic, right? There's so many shots here that would fit into Ex Machina, would fit into Annihilation. I really, really enjoyed the soundtrack by I can't remember.
Jeff Borrow and Ben Salisbury, from formerly of Portishead.
Yeah, so like it's an amazing soundtrack, and we've got a couple of tracks by the Insects as well, which I thought were chilling and kind of disturbing. I spent a lot of nights watching Devs, and just in the stillness of night, having that soundtrack was it had the intended effect. I think that's something that stood out to me. Of course, it is beautiful and it is pensive, as we've come to expect of Garland. And overall, like the questions that it asks and the answers, I mean, the questions that it asks are great. The answers that it provides, not as great. But like overall, like I really did enjoy it. Like before we go into any sort of like spoiler territory.
Sweet. Okay, like for those who are confused as to what Devs is, I'm gonna basically lay out a small premise, but even after watching Devs, you might still be confused. So like you just have to see it lah. So it kind of stars Sonoya Mizuno, who is one of Garland's regular collaborators. You may remember her as the AI the dancing AI Kyoko in Ex Machina. She's also the otherworldly humanoid in Annihilation's climax, the one that's mirroring Natalie Portman.
Yep.
So for the first time, she's starring in a lead role. She plays Lily Chan. Lily is a computer programmer working at a cutting-edge Silicon Valley tech startup called Amaya with her boyfriend Sergey, until he gets promoted to the company's devs team. Is mysterious, and then he turns up dead in an apparent suicide the very next day. Lily doesn't buy it, and after teaming up with her ex-boyfriend, her investigations lead her to suspect Amaya's owner, Forrest, played by Parks and Recreation's own Nick Offerman, leading her to uncover the potentially dangerous and world-altering research that he's doing in devs. And I really like Nick Offerman here. Anyway, he plays like a very different role in this kind of morally ambiguous tech titan, but he has his signature swaggering wig turned down and his all-accessible humanity dialed up to 11. What is Devs? Devs is one of those shows that is particularly difficult to review without spoiling it, because I think the meat of the ideas is hidden behind veils of mystery and secrecy.
Yeah.
And the series takes its time doling out that particular mystery over the course of the season.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that Devs is about Garland's fascination with determinism. Devs is about using groundbreaking quantum computers that Forrest and his team are working on. So they're working on a predictive algorithm based on deterministic principles to predict with 100% accuracy the past, present, and future of organisms and thus shatter the illusion of free will.
Hmm.
So the most basic premise is factor in enough information, account for quantum mechanics, and provide enough computing or processing power, and you can theoretically see everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen through pure deterministic math.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is the case, then free will doesn't exist because this computer knows what you're going to do. Suffice to say that Devs is a heady piece of writing. So what do you think about how it deals with the determinism versus free will thing?
Oh man. Okay, so it's very hard to discuss a lot of this without like if you don't have kind of like a background into what exactly quantum computing is or what exactly like determinism is and all of that.
Mm.
Uh, I don't know. It's how do we go about talking about these things without? Hmm.
Spoiling. Well, I mean, I guess I can just look at how what he's trying to do with these things. Like,
Yeah.
it's he's trying to melt this with a sense of religion, right?
Yeah.
Like he's using religious allegory and a strong dose of this genre flourish by kind of like what we think of God is what people will think of technology like there is in devs. So there's a lot of that metaphor going on, especially with devs being called what it is in the finale, and and
Yeah.
and it explains just enough about the philosophical and scientific concepts of determinism and quantum computing and quantum physics.
Yep.
Devs kind of leans heavier into science than fiction without becoming a physics lecture. And I
Mm-hmm.
think Garland is a wise enough filmmaker to keep his existential story spiced up with unpredictable twists and shocking jokes of violence, like more traditional genre content. There are spies, there's mystery, there's murders and things like that. So it kind of keeps the whole pensive, brooding aspect not to a minimum, but it balances it out.
Yeah.
So there's excitement and there's thoughtfulness as well.
Yeah, I have no problems with the pacing. I think like much like Ex Machina, the pacing did fare really well, which I didn't feel was as good in Annihilation.
Mm.
So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Okay, so what did you have any issues with devs in general?
A little bit. Like, I thought it was okay. I mean, the good points is I thought it was very smart. I thought it was one of the most beautiful shows I've ever seen. Garland is like
Yeah,
an incredible filmmaker,
yep, yes,
but I think it can be inconsistent and occasionally threatens to teeter too far into intellectualism over emotional storytelling.
yeah,
The character work, I feel, wasn't great, and
yeah,
I was never invested in Lily or anybody else.
yeah,
I was invested in the story. But Garland is I think a clever writer, and he layers in slow burn reveals to
mm-hmm.
keep the material gripping even at its most ponderous moments lah.
Yep,
So it's a story that's like frustrating in broad strokes, but if you're patient, it does cycle inwards towards greater complexity and nuance with each episode until it arrives at its core truth. So your mileage may vary on whether the destination is worth the long journey,
yeah,
and there's no doubt that Death lacks the sheer force of impact that Garland has with his more tightly wound feature productions,
mm,
because they're tighter, they're shorter,
yeah,
and even if some of the final reveals feel somewhat underwhelming, I think it does open a Pandora's box of existential quandaries that gives you a lot to think about, which is what Alex Garland is great at doing.
yeah. Okay, yeah. I think for me, the acting, I think Offerman did a decent job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So far, like very out of his kind of like usual scope of work. I think he did a decent job, but at the same time, at the back of my mind, right, I'm thinking, okay, you've got this insidious tech genius, leader of his own company, incredibly powerful man, and I'm also thinking about Oscar Isaac's role
Mm.
in Ex Machina, right, and how
Yep.
different that is, and how much more powerful and sinister that was,
Yep.
and I don't know if Offerman actually managed anything even close to that, right? That was one of the first kind of issues that I had. There were moments in time where his it lacked his performance lacked emotional um it,
Heft.
yeah, I didn't feel the kind of gravitas that role needed from him, and
Mm.
that occasionally brought me out of the experience. Sonoya, I mean, I thought, what was the other sci-fi one that we reviewed that she was in when she played the quirky doctor?
Quirky
Uh,
Doctor. I can't quite remember what that was.
yeah, I can't remember. Okay, but shifting her as like the main character is problematic. She's not great
Mm-hmm.
an actress, right? Obviously, she was a dancer, martial artist, model.
Oh,
Um,
you're talking about Maniac, right?
oh yes, Maniac. That's right. So I thought with
Yeah.
Maniac, maybe we would get a interesting performance out of her for here, but her Sonoya as Lily fell flat a lot for me. There
Mm.
were times when it was very it felt very vacant,
Mm.
points in time where like just she has physical presence, right? But
Mm.
when it comes, for example, this one particular scene where she's being kind of in the psychiatrist's office or the psychologist's office, right, and they're having that conversation to and fro and all of that, there were moments in time when the camera just like sets in on her face and I can't read anything out of that,
Yep.
and as clever as her character is supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And given that that comes off the back of her outburst earlier on in the day or the day before
Yeah. With Kenton, right?
with Kenton, right? Like
Yeah.
that didn't feel kind of in line with what I expected the
Mm-hmm.
performance to be, So I do feel like at certain really key points that fell through, but I do agree that Garland does weave a um impressive enough and a compulsive enough tale for us to kind of
Mm.
like forgive those things as the season progressed.
I agree. I agree. I think like with Nick Offerman, I don't think he was going for a villain role per se.
Mm,
Like he wasn't
yeah,
trying to be menacing because I don't think his character is menacing because he sort of accepted the fact that he has no free will. So he's just very uh he doesn't he doesn't have agency, right? So
yeah,
he's just doing things because it's like Dr. Manhattan, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but what Garland is better at doing than emotional storytelling is that he's a hell of a craftsman. Like
Yeah.
he's good at like crafting this atmosphere, this pervasive sense of anxiety and escalating dread. And it's also obviously downright gorgeous to look at. It's alternately vibrant and stark, earthy and modernistic. It is jam packed with striking imagery that sears right into your brain. Like
Yeah.
the giant little girl Amaya in the forest.
Mm,
Looking down on everyone. There's such great imagery, and everything about the show feels more poetic and lyrical than narrative.
yeah.
It has a slightly dreamlike sense of surrealism where you can move quite naturally between something that feels very normal and day to day
Mm-hmm.
and something that feels hallucinogenic. Likewise, the soundscape, like you mentioned,
Wow.
jarring and terrifying, and it
Absolutely
can also
terrifying.
fill you with with an almost religious awe when I hear the soundtrack lah. So
Mm-hmm.
I think all told, I like it more than I dislike it.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you?
Uh, I do feel. I mean, like for me, like it appeals to the nerd in me just because I've done research on a lot of the concepts that they kind of like delve into, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think like it treads a fine enough line for me to like enjoy the fact that they're referencing these things. If you know
Yeah.
what they're talking about, like it adds that much more, right? But it's kind of like more insider kind of like understanding of the concepts that they're doing. But at the same time, you don't need to know those things to enjoy what they've been doing. I do just feel like, yeah, I mean, I think you're completely right. There were just moments of inconsistency, right?
Mm.
That are sandwiched by some really, really great, beautiful, and the real dreamscape moments, right? That
Yep.
just kind of like let it fall enough for me to be like, oh, okay, unfortunate. That's unfortunate.
Mm.
So yeah, overall, I did enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And
How would you rate it?
it's gonna be a 7.5 for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I think same for me. It's also 7.5 for me. I think All Told Deaths is a rich and complex sci-fi story.
Yeah.
It's not Garland's best work,
No. Yeah.
but it does explore his creative idiosyncrasies to a much greater depth than his previous movies. So it's very ambitious. I like its novelistic and expensive and avant-garde vibe.
Mhm.
But yeah, on the downside, it's sometimes tedious and ponderous and not as rewarding as his films. So a 7.5 or point 10 from both of us.
Yeah, yeah. I do hope he continues to try doing TV. I think he might get better at it as we go
Yeah,
along, but we'll
yeah.
see.
He just
Yeah.
needs to learn to be a bit tighter lah, and how each episode needs to be, episodic lah. There needs to be a beginning, middle,
Yeah,
and end. Like,
exactly.
don't let it be an 8-hour movie lah. Is what he did here.
Yeah, essentially.
Yep. Next up, me and Hardy recently watched a show called Dispatches from Elsewhere. It is weirdly enough, man, this is kind of, it feels like another cheat because it's presented as a sci-fi story, but it's really
It's
not.
not. But I mean, it is.
Yeah,
But it kind of
it
is.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's presented at first as a sci-fi story,
Uh-huh.
and then it kind of veers elsewhere, lah. But okay, before all of that, let me like lay the groundwork.
Sure.
It's a new story by a new series by Jason Segel of all people from How I Met Your Mother fame.
Mm-hmm.
It is very weird and interesting, and one of the most unpredictable shows on TV right now, I feel. The very first episode, right? It begins with Richard E. Grant staring wordlessly into the camera for like a solid 30
That
seconds.
awkwardness was awesome.
An uncomfortably long time,
Yeah.
right? And then suddenly he starts talking to you, and that's just kind of, and it gets weirder from there, and that's kind of the vibe of the show. The main plot feels impossible to pin down, but let me try. Grant plays a man named Octavio Coleman, the founder of a mysterious Jejune Institute,
Mm-hmm.
an organization that dabbles in bizarre technological pursuits like building helmets to communicate with dolphins, VR headsets that can replay human memories, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
He may also be the mastermind behind an elaborate role-playing game slash social experiment that involves sending participants combing through the city of Philadelphia to find strange clues, interact with odd characters like a breakdancing Bigfoot, for example,
Yep.
and search for a lost girl named Clara.
Mm-hmm.
Or could Octavio actually be the monster that imprisoned Clara and is using her for his own nefarious ends? That's all a mystery. All the while, the players are forced to pick sides between the Jejune Institute or a ragtag group of resistance fighters known as the Elsewhere Society, who are opposing Jejune's capitalist greed.
Mm-hmm.
And the protagonists of our show are four random people roped into playing this role-playing game, and they are as lost as we are, but because they're either broken or bored, they find some sort of fulfillment in this quest, right?
Yeah.
And many people might be frustrated because the show's plot is intentionally confusing,
Yeah, it is.
and it's not kind of meant to be deciphered, unlike other puzzle box mystery shows.
Mm-hmm.
The point of the show isn't clues and conspiracies. It's instead it asks ourselves to see us in these protagonists. You know, every episode asks us to see us in one of the main characters and value the human nature of the stories beyond the truth and lies about what's happening around them. So, what do you think about this, Hadi?
There's so many things to say.
Yeah, I know, right?
But okay, to keep it short, I really enjoyed the acting in all of this. From Sally Field to Andre 3000 to the woman who plays Simone.
Eve Lindley, a transgender actress.
Transgender actress, right?
Simone.
Yeah.
And of course Jason Segel.
Jason Segel. I mean, who have thunk? No, actually, it was not bad. How I Met Your Mother.
You know, to be honest, Jason Segel has never played any other character. Like this is his character in every rom-com, in every sitcom.
That's true.
Yeah.
This nerdy out of no, a bit blur, you know.
Socially awkward.
Awkward.
Yeah.
And I like that the first few episodes are focused on a character. Yeah, so like the first episode of Jason Segel's character, Peter, I think.
Yeah, then Simone, then Sally Field, then Andre 3000, Janice, and on Andre 3000
whose name
Fred
Wynn.
With a W.
With a WYNN. And how these four really, really different personalities slowly become close, you know?
Yep.
It's the human relationship that really got me into this series. I felt that it was a bit confusing at the beginning, but once you got a hang on, once you understood what they were trying to do, it kind of like flowed very well. I constantly kept on wondering to myself, because I had no background information on this at all until you told me about it.
Yeah, if you're watching the show, right, I advise you to like kind of don't read anything about what about what it's based on. Yeah.
So after I finished, then when Hidzir told me about it, I was like, holy shit, that's so cool. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, again, it is. I'm quite surprised how much I enjoyed this, because I didn't really like it at first, with that weird awkwardness in the beginning, and then Jason Segel being a very like being introduced as this, like, oh, I've seen this before, the guy who just goes through the motions in life and all that stuff. Like, we've seen that so many times done. But as you progress into the game and that story and that relationship between the four of them and all that stuff, right? It becomes so meaty and so satisfying. And by the end of it, you're just like, oh, that was actually a very good series.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. The labyrinth of weirdness is a labyrinth, but it just kind of forms a journey. It's the real track you're on. It's actually a character-driven story.
It is,
and it's some of the most richly developed characters I've seen. And there were multiple moments that made me cry with each of these characters. Like, for example, like Sally Field Janice when she was reliving her wedding.
Oh,
right?
that was good.
I think that was what the first moment that really like quite hit me. Like, oh man, this show is kind of something special. Yeah. Character work and acting is just excellent. You feel so much for them that you soon care more about their personal journey than whatever is going on with Jejun or the elsewhere society or whatever else.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. The specials from elsewhere, I think it's unlike anything else on TV right now. And it has all the highs and lows of that sort of ingenuity. There are moments that defy all conventions. At various points, the story is told via cartoons, 3D animated flip books, a talking Billy Best fish, breakdancing Bigfoot, and other weird things.
So many cool things.
So many cool things, right? And although we are never really ever quite sure what we are watching, the stylish, imaginative flourishes are always grounded by really great character work, and it's something that other shows of this ilk, that has a big mystery, like narrative structure and inventiveness, shows like Westworld and Legion, right? They aren't as adept at doing character work as this show is. So I feel like it's a very clever, confusing, heartfelt, and inspiring tale of the human condition, spun through the story of four people brought together by something larger than themselves, and it's a wonderful journey.
It is. It was so worth it.
Yeah, man.
It was so worth it.
Just to keep in mind, we have not seen the finale. The finale is tomorrow. But, but we've seen 9 out of the 10 episodes. So I think it's more than enough to judge it, lah. So any like concluding thoughts before you give your rating, Hadi?
I can't wait to see the season finale. I mean, after what happened in the previous episode, won't spoil it, but goddamn, son.
Yeah, man, it takes me to some really unexpected places.
So I cannot wait how they're gonna finish this off.
Correct.
I think it's called Top Boy or something, the last episode.
Oh, really?
Or Toy something. I can't remember.
Top Boy, like the Drake show?
I don't know, man.
Well, if you don't know, Drake actually has a show in Britain called Top Boy. It's about like black people, and it's East End lah. It's one of those gritty.
Sorry. What was not Top Boy? The Boy. Jauh, man, so far. So it's called The Boy. My bad. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm psyched for it as well. But I think based on what I've seen, like I'm actually giving this a 9 out of 10.
Oh,
it's a very high rating.
Easily 9 out of 10. Yeah.
Interesting.
Damn, yeah. Who would have thought that we would have rated this higher than Plot Against America?
Different. It's so different, though. Yeah.
It's so different, yeah. But I think because it's a nice relief from the horribleness going on in the world, Like Plot America is great as a cautionary tale, but sometimes I need like a distraction from something life affirming, and I think like that the special from also is life affirming. And whereas Plot Against America is soul crushing.
It is.
So I responded to the brightness of that lah.
Yeah, same. Me too.
Okay. Next up we'll be diving into. Hold on, what was your score again? 9.
Yeah, same as yours.
Okay, nice. Okay. Next up we'll be diving into a little segment we like to call Quick Hits, where I talk about some of the TV shows and movies I've seen recently, briefly, that my co-hosts haven't seen. But I think on this particular occasion, you guys have seen some of the shows, right? What are the shows that you guys have seen on this particular list that maybe we can both discuss at the same time?
Midnight Gospel.
You see Midnight Gospel? Okay. What about you?
Oh, and Mortal Kombat Legends.
Okay. Isa?
I can hop in for Beastars.
Okay.
I can hop in for Beastars and Midnight Gospel.
Nice. Have you seen Tales from the Loop, by the way?
No, I haven't started on it yet. Yeah.
Okay. In that case, let's start off with the Midnight Gospel. It comes to you from Adventure Time creator Pendleton Ward and Duncan Trussell of the Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast. It is this super trippy new animated series that follows a quote unquote space caster, which is a space podcaster, as he traverses the multiverse, interviewing a gamut of multi-dimensional beings, ranging from tiny clown creatures to a severed head making out for women and weird other things for his podcast lah. And much like Adventure Time, the series is silly and profound in equal measures. The big difference is that Midnight Gospel sheds the pretense of a children's show right away. You can tell by the cursing
Yeah.
and the gore and the blood that this is an adult show, and you can tell right out of the gate, and it's mind blowing in many ways. Watt and Trussell have joined forces, basically, right, to animate select conversations from Trussell's soul-searching and occasionally boisterous podcast.
Yeah.
So all the dialogue here is taken from Trussell's podcast. Like these are real conversations he had with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are real conversations he had about. Usually he talks about the different life philosophies. He talks about magic.
Yep.
He talks about meditation. He talks about metaphysics. And at the same time, the pair have designed this beguiling fictional backdrop with Trussell voicing a pink-skinned creature named Clancy, who inhabits an eye-popping intergalactic backdrop and owns a universe simulator, which is kind of an advanced virtual reality machine that allows him to travel to imaginary worlds and interact with various intelligent life forms. And if that sounds trippy, just you wait. The Midnight Gospel relishes the opportunity to catch you off guard with its surrealness. What do you think about the Midnight Gospel?
I enjoyed it. Duncan Trussell, I've been a fan of his because he's been on Joe Rogan's podcast a few times, and I love whenever he's on. They go into this weird DMT infused like conversations and all that stuff. So this felt like it really felt like an extension of Duncan Trussell
podcast. Yeah.
And it's how his brain just works lah. I love the character Clancy. Clancy's the best.
Yeah, man. Clancy's amazing. Yeah.
And this is the Adventure Time guys, right? Pendleton Ward and all.
Pendleton Ward, he created Adventure Time.
Yeah. So you could tell the some of the influences and all that lah, just by the stylisticness of this thing. But wow, what an interesting show.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, it's really interesting and I loved it.
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
What about you, Isa?
Okay, when I first heard what they were trying to do with the Midnight Gospel, I was like, okay, like Trussell, I've heard some of his stuff here and there. It's a bit on the edge, but for them to pair up the visuals with the content in that particular manner works so much better than I thought it would. Right, that kind of took me by surprise. I wholly enjoyed the Midnight Gospel. It was just one of those things that, I think it's bizarre and absurd and incredibly enjoyable at the same time, and just a joy to watch in a time like this, if you know what I mean, right? When we're having more time to just kind of like we end up having a lot of this time where we're just digging into our own kind of psyche and all of that, and knowing that this is a product of Trussell digging into his own psyche, right, as sort of like a interdimensional kind of space adventure, and as he speaks to all these other characters, is I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, in a sense, isn't the internet just a universe simulator, and aren't we also doing podcasts because we are bored at home? It's essentially what Clancy is doing.
Yeah.
I love the casual rhythms of the organic conversation, and just the way it stands in stark contrast to the outrageousness that's happening on screen.
Yeah.
As there is this amiable, inviting quality to these interviews that make them engaging.
Yeah.
And every episode approaches very sophisticated ideas while stuffing them into this astonishing psychedelic cartoon, so that Midnight Gospel forces you to visualize the conversations and its substance. The result is this trippy sci-fi adventure. It's just a feast for your eyes and your mind. It's actually pretty good because I think at first it starts kind of silly. Talking about magic and metaphysics, but I think its final episode where Trussell interviews his late mother was very emotional. and really delved into kind of there's this kind of mini character arc for Clancy as well.
Yeah.
That the episode with his mother really like wrapped home. So that in a sense it is a podcast like come to life, but in a sense there's also a real narrative based around this dopey anti-hero. Yeah, man. You guys have any final thoughts about this?
I suggest you watch it, man.
Yeah,
Please.
honestly, for quick hits, I'm gonna highly recommend this.
Yeah.
Man.
I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I completely enjoyed this.
Yeah, about 8.
Yeah.
Same.
I'm giving it an 8 as well. Outside of Trussell's interview with his late mother, which is very emotional.
Damn, that was so good. You didn't like
in
that?
the finale, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I loved it. I loved it.
Okay.
Like I also want to recommend another episode. It's an interview of Dr. Drew Pinsky, who's kind of cast as the president of a world overrun by zombies. And he's kind of like, cocking a shotgun while talking about the parameters of legalizing weed. It's an amazing conversation. There's also the novelist Anne Lamott, who is a carnivorous hippo, I think, recalling her path to sobriety. As they enter this meat mush at a slaughterhouse run by killer clowns. I think my favorite of all, though, is this guy called Damien Eccles. He was a death row survivor. He was one of the West Memphis Three from the Paradise Lost documentary series. He stars as a fish creature who talks through his preference for magic over traditional Buddhist meditation and explains why he feels grateful for his years behind bars. So, I mean, this is a podcast for people who don't listen to podcasts. And I would highly recommend it as well. It's kind of stream of consciousness random, but I think it's structured enough to make it worthwhile. So I like this a lot, man. 8 out of 10 for me as well. Yeah, man. Oh, by the way, do you have like any favorite stories that any of the interviewers told?
I love the mother one. That was my favorite.
That's definitely my top as well.
Yeah, man.
Because it's a dead mother.
So
the Dr. Biscuit one is also a highlight for me. Yeah, that was really, really like just the visual imagery alone, and them talking about legalizing weed was incredibly funny. Outside of those two,
so
I'm gonna need more time to kind of like think about stand-up moments.
I mean, I'm a casual enough reader of all the philosophies and stuff to kind of understand what they were talking about. But I learned something completely new from this podcast, from the Midnight Gospel, from an interviewer. She's a mortician named Caitlin Doughty, who delivers this engrossing history lesson about the evolution of the deaf industrial complex. Its impact about turning mortality into a taboo. Why people started embalming people, how undertakers started becoming an industry, and I never knew about the history, and that was fascinating.
Which episode is that?
The one where he has a conversation with Deaf.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
And then she explains the deaf industrial complex, how embalming started during the Civil War to bring the corpses of the men home, and then they started convincing you that everybody needs to be embalmed, and then they started making money from it. Fascinating conversation, man. Love watching the show. And do you realize that it was released on 420, which for very obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, what else have you guys seen that you mentioned? Mortal Kombat. Do you want to get into Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, Mortal Kombat. Damn, son.
Mortal Kombat Legends, Scorpion's Revenge, offers a new perspective on the familiar Mortal Kombat story by making Scorpion's arc the spine of the narrative. What do you think about this?
Can I just say, faithful adaptation?
And just from a different point of view.
Yeah. It was fun. For what it was, it is a Mortal Kombat movie lah. Nothing that's like the live action one at all, obviously. Really good graphic action that is expected out of a Mortal Kombat IP lah. It could be a tad too much at times. You know what I mean? Like at times I just felt, oh god, enough. Okay, I get it. But for what it is serviceable, enjoyable Mortal Kombat outing lah for me. Yeah.
How would you rate this, Hadi?
I I'll give it like a 6.5 lah.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
I mean, it's not. I wouldn't highly recommend it. Yeah.
I didn't quite enjoy this. Like, I think the film starts strong by kind of
Yeah.
showcasing the tragedy that made Scorpion, such a
Scorpion.
badass that we all know and love, But then it kind of becomes encumbered by franchise fan service,
Yes.
Like, it's a bit of a waste, because if they actually slowed things down and dug into who is Scorpion, what makes him tick, like how did he learn to control his powers? How does he feel
Yep.
about losing his humanity? This film isn't
Yep.
interested in going anything but skin deep with his protagonist, so we never quite find out. So I don't
Yeah.
understand the
I'm
point
nodding
of
right now.
this framing device. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I guess it delivers when it comes to the basic staples: the gory martial arts
The
action,
gory martial arts.
the
Yeah.
self-deprecating sense of humor, but it doesn't offer much else. So I'm giving this
Nope.
a 4.5.
I'm
Yeah,
giving it a
so,
6.5 because
I-
I enjoyed the goriness lah. But
Okay.
but really, after a while, right? Even I was like, oh man, again, really? That was a bit too much
Yeah.
at times. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Whatever.
Next, we're going to be talking about an anime that debuted on Netflix. It's called Beastars. It is a sensation online, on Tumblr specifically. A lot of furries are into this anime, apparently. Beastars is an no shit. Beastars is an adaptation of a manga
Yeah.
of the same name, created by a guy called Paru Itagaki. It is set in a civilized anthropomorphic society where herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores coexist without getting eaten or eating each other. It's kind of like Zootopia, except hornier and much more violent, and kind of goes beyond Zootopia's prejudice allegory to deal with slightly more complex themes of identity, sexual identity, and society. The show takes place at a boarding school called Sheraton Academy. It focuses on one subset of students in particular, the drama club. Though these handful of drama kids, through this handful of drama clips, we get a close up of each student's thoughts and frustrations about speciesism, predator versus prey complexes, and sexism. Things kick off in the first episode when a carnivorous student eats an alpaca at the school, and then tensions rise between the carnivores and the herbivores, and later we see the latter see the carnivores as monsters, while the carnivores are tired of the prejudice against them. What do you think about this, Isa?
Okay, like the conversation that we had prior to that, there's a slew of kind of like furry anime out right now. I didn't finish Beastars, not all the way. So I got through maybe like 8 episodes or so. I do think the premise isn't new, right? Like it's something that I think Welcome to Seton Academy was running kind of like a parallel premise at the same time, high school anthropomorphic animals and so on there, but we have humans in those. So it changes the
And of
plot
course,
slightly
Zootopia lah.
differently. And
Yeah.
of course, Zootopia, which is not set in a high school and sends the high school drama and all of that. I think I understand why Beastars is kind of like such a sensation, right? Outside of the furry thing as well, the anthropomorphic animals give enough kind of like objective leeway for most people to kind of examine some very uncomfortable topics for young people, right? Especially like with violence and sexuality, and all of that gets to play out in an extremely zany way, right? And I think a lot of the time when things are strange and then things are a bit like absurd, that's when Beastars kind of like gets into its own rhythm. It's the moments in time when things get a bit more serious that I feel like it falls a bit short for me. But I mean, out of the half a season that I did catch, I enjoyed most of it. I just felt like there was a lot of melodramatic moments that annoyed me. I think in particular especially with the love interest with the
Legosi
Wolf and the
and
Rabbit
Haru.
and Haru. Yeah, there were just moments in time where I was just like I had my eyes kind of rolling in the back of my head. And for that reason, given the whole slew of anime that I have to watch, I decided to drop it. This was before it got on Netflix. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so I before it debuted on Netflix, I was watching that as part of the slew of stuff that I needed to cover for the season. And it made it past the first 3 episode mark that I usually give. But
Right.
like I think there were quite a number of things that I had to keep track of, and Beastars kind of just fell
Mm.
by the wayside. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I see how you came to that conclusion, because like I like these stars a lot, but if I had so much to watch, also this wouldn't be a top priority at all for me.
Yeah.
I did kind of enjoy the perverseness of the Legosi and Haru relationship. He doesn't know whether
Yeah.
he wants to eat her. He doesn't know whether he wants to fuck her. Like that
Yeah.
is a weird dynamic, man.
It is.
He's
Yeah.
not the only character with like issues about identity in relationships to other species. Like I think being predator or prey is a source of many characters' deep insecurities. Like
Mm-hmm.
Louis, who is the red deer, who is the seemingly untouchable president of the drama club, refuses to show any weakness and clashes with Legosi over the wolf's willingness to avoid conflict and stay timid. The
Yep.
deer views it as a personal insult that somebody like a wolf would want to be weak.
Yep.
And Haru takes issue with also being considered cute and weak, and
Yeah.
she overcomes that differently. Like she uses her
Mm-hmm.
sexuality as a coping mechanism. She
Yeah.
considers like slut shaming and ostracization as a lesser evil compared to being weak lah. So I think the real
Yeah.
charm of Beastars lies in the time that it devotes to each of the characters' different relationships with each other and within themselves lah.
Yeah.
The members of the cast are young and complex, and it navigates this path of defining themselves through interesting
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Yeah.
There's and I feel like none of the kids are tropes either. So I I liked it for that in that respect, and I
Yeah.
also like some of the visual gags it has. Like sex and sexual identity is such a big part of this show.
Yeah.
It's different. I've never
It
quite
does have
seen it
some
in.
really good visual gags. I have to give them that.
Like there's this. Do you ever get to the episode where this chicken enjoys laying eggs and then watching people eat her eggs?
Yeah.
It's a scene.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor that broke my brain. Like I knew what it meant, but my brain just refused to process it.
Yeah, it's okay. So a lot of the visual gags are pretty unique, but like for that particular gag, for me, it wasn't as big of a deal because there's another anime series that's even more sexual than Beastars called
Mm.
Ishoku Reviewers, Interspecies Reviewers, right? And they have an entire episode dedicated to eating eggs as a fetish.
Oh
So
wow.
in comparison, like the gag pales a great deal. Interspecies Reviewers is like kind of next level etchy stuff. So which is why I've never covered it, but it's hilariously funny.
Okay, yeah.
Uh,
I
yeah,
I think like one final point I just wanted to bring up is like I think
yeah,
I'm not a big fan of CGI animation, but I thought
yeah,
the CGI animation here was relatively decent, and I like the hybrid style. It combines
yeah.
stylistic 2D animation, for flashbacks and dreams, with CGI animation. So I like the hybrid style of it lah.
Ye-
I thought it was cool.
Yeah, in general, I'm usually not a big fan as well, but I think it was very tasteful this time around. And I don't know if it's because they're anthropomorphic animals and we are leaning towards like the whole Zootopia kind of feel to it. That's why we
Hmm.
can, like it's a lot more appealing than it usually is when they do human stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't mind it at all. I thought it was pretty tasteful.
How would you rate this, and any concluding thoughts?
Well, given that I only made it through kind of half the season, it's a decent anime. I'm going to give it like a 6.5 for me.
Okay, yeah. I liked it for the most part. I think I agree with most of Isa's complaints about it. I enjoyed the nature versus nurture aspect of it, but instinct versus rational thought, push and pull conflict internally is fascinating. But there are some like lame parts to the show as well.
Mm.
But on the plus side, I thought like the theme song was like a complete banger.
Yeah,
It's
it's a great team song.
one of my favorite opening theme songs. I think in anime of all time. Like I think it's my favorite since Samurai Champloo was around.
Yeah, that is high praise, my friend.
Yeah, it's a 6.5 out of 10 for me as well.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, next, nice. What's up next? Hold on, let me scroll down. I'm going to be talking about Tales from the Loop. It is a new anthology series on Amazon Prime. Uh, Strangely and uniquely, it's based on sci-fi paintings.
Yeah.
Not a book, not a comic. It's based on paintings by a Swedish artist, Simon oh god, I don't know how to pronounce this. Stalenhag, Simon Stalenhag,
Yep.
whose art kind of fills country landscapes inspired by the Swedish countryside with retrofuturistic technology, discarded machinery, and brutalist architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of has a gift for keying into this show has a gift for keying into the eerie beauty of those visuals and finding stories that match their disquieting melancholy. The paintings are set with strange images of soulful robots, floating rocks, and snow that falls up from the ground. But like the stories of the show are so profoundly human.
Mm-hmm.
It takes place in a small town called Mercer, Ohio. So it's not in Sweden, lah. It's in America. But in a similar landscape, lah, Mercer, Ohio is a snow-capped small town as well.
Yeah.
In some hazy, indeterminate version of what appears to be the 1980s. Mercer is the home to the Mercer Center for Experimental Physics. It's colloquially known as the Loop. The Loop has a founder named Russ Willard, a history and a center, and it's built around a mysterious black orb called the Eclipse, described as the beating heart of the Loop. It's a machine that can seemingly make the impossible possible. But beyond that, the details are fuzzy. The show is never concerned with any loop mythology or loop lore.
Oh.
What is the loop? Where did the loop come from? How does the loop work? None of that is explored. None of it matters next to how the loop impacts the lucky or unlucky people who live near it.
Mm-hmm.
There are no world-ending apocalypses. There are no conniving villains after the loop's power. Or even the loop doesn't even act like some sort of god. Tales from the Loop is simply about everyday people, and that's the beauty of it, I think. And I think it might frustrate some people who are sci-fi fans,
Mm-hmm.
but what the Loop is and what it does really isn't to the point of the series at all. The point is to use this unsettlingly beautiful alternate universe and trippy sci-fi concepts as way to explore emotional truths of different people.
Interesting.
The show doesn't really have a star, but if it does, it is Rebecca Hall, who plays a mother with a strange past. But after we learn her story in the first episode, so Rebecca Hall's story is the first episode, right?
Mhm.
Her prominence ebbs and flows as background characters take central focus in their own episodes. So, for example, a random neighborhood kid in episode 1 suddenly becomes the protagonist in episode 4. And then when we see a security guard randomly, like, a background character in episode 3, he becomes the star of episode 6. So it's connected tangentially, but
Yep.
each episode is standalone and totally standalone. It kind of forms this mosaic where each episode coalesces together to form a hopeful but this disquieting portrait of humanity. It's in its own ineffable way. The relationship between the people and the loop is profoundly reassuring. Tales is not a happy show. Characters suffer tremendous loss, and the stories explore things like aging, yearning, parenthood, and grief in painful ways. But there is a comforting affirmation in the universality of the stories, in that whatever it is we want, whatever it is we need, whatever it is we desire, we are not alone in seeking it.
Mhm.
And there's a certain lived-in quality to the show that makes it riveting also. There's a bipedal robot here, hovering structures there, but these residents know and are too familiar with the anomalies.
Mhm.
Yeah, just so it's not unusual at all. Like, they treat it like we treat our smartphones. It's just a thing that's there, and the origins and the purpose are never explained. But the characters' nonchalance towards these things makes the world of the loop feel more real. It is ultimately less interested in how its strange universe works than what it's like to live within it,
Yep.
and the ways that universe can reflect our own lives back to us, and beyond nerdy things like law and action and explanations. I
Mhm.
think like that's what sci-fi and art is supposed to evoke, these emotional reflections of ourselves. Now on the negative side, I can see how many people may not like the show. It's slow. Nothing is explained.
Yeah.
The episode quality can be inconsistent at sometimes, but that's you gotta accept that with all anthologies, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mostly enjoyed kind of these beautiful tone poems. So I think overall, like, I really enjoyed the show. Not super high on it, but not super low on it either. It's a 7 out of 10 for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You were saying like one of our friends, Ellie, really loves this show, right?
Yeah,
Did
Ellie
she tell you
loves
why?
this show. I mean, like, she didn't really go into much detail, but she was saying she wasn't sure. Okay, I was. You remember the conversation we had with her, how she loved the OA and we didn't quite like the OA.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was just kind of worried if it was going to be one of those other things, because I really didn't like the OA, but she loves it. You know, so I was curious to see like what your take on it was be, and like what her take on it was going to be, and then like kind of see if I could find a middle ground when I eventually do get to it. I mean, I have it, I just haven't watched it yet. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's been pretty interesting. She didn't go into much detail, but I do feel that a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's based on the paintings, right? And as an
Yep.
artist herself, she can see how each and every episode kind of like draws from that a very different um kind of anthology medium, right? For
Hmm.
them to draw inspiration from. So I'm gonna hazard a guess and say that's what it is. But I haven't really spoken to her about it in much depth.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like in the end, like I like the show as well. Like, I like beautiful human stories, lah.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think as a sci-fi show, it falls a bit short because some of the concepts are a bit derivative.
Hmm. Right.
But the acting and storytelling is very well done.
Cool. I will check it out nonetheless. Yes.
Yep. Next up, I'm talking about the fifth and final season of The Magicians. Because it was suddenly cancelled by Sci-Fi a few weeks ago. It kind of makes me a bit sad.
What happened there?
Uh, Low ratings, man. They're averaging like 500,000 viewers a week, so that's not great.
Mm-hmm.
But the Magicians has long been one of my favorite shows on television. Even more so when it started leaving the books behind and began carving out its own path. The show to me was always like endlessly creative and loads of fun, coming up with wild concepts that and turns that were always left field, but it never sacrificed emotional arcs and the troubling realities of its characters.
Mm-hmm.
And of all the ways it diverges from the books, none was more shocking than the season 4 finale, which the last season finale, it killed off the book's main protagonist, Quentin Coldwater.
Oh no.
Uh, and if you understand the rules of magic in this universe, Quentin's death is permanent. There's like no magical takebacks here. The showrunners have been very clear about that. This is a permanent death.
Interesting.
And this is wild because Quentin Coldwater do this, right? This is like Harry Potter killing Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
He is the Harry Potter of the show, and it's just wild that they will kill him off. But that's one of those things that I really love about the show. Like it really takes a lot of big swings every season.
Interesting.
Eh,
Okay.
but weirdly, I was also worried because it's like, how would the show function without Quentin? But like I should have known better. Time and time again, Magicians paints itself into a corner, flirts with jumping the shark, and then takes a sharp left turn into holy shit territory. All the while, kind of keeping like its foot firmly planted on the emotional reality of the characters, and impossibly, but not without a bit of clunkiness, season 5 nicely recovers from Quentin's exit.
Mm-hmm.
The show has always been about the brutal realities of adulthood, the depression, the grief, the frustration. And season 5 leans heavily into its long running themes. By leaning into its rich ensemble, all the characters deal with Quentin's death in various ways. But possibly the best decision the writers could have made is that the story moves on from Quentin. There are new quests, new mysteries, and new baddies, and we quickly understand that the hero we lost was never the only hero of the story because this show has a rich,
Mm-hmm.
big ensemble. The backbone of season 5 appears to be twofold. Firstly, magic is back on Earth thanks to what our characters did in season 4. Magic was taken away by gods; they brought magic back. But our crew, they surpassed or bypassed the authority of gods to bring magic back to Earth. Unfortunately, they've unwittingly poured an ocean of magic into this
Oh
world.
no.
Previously, magicians had to make do with a bit of magic here and there, drips and drabs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now magic is so ample, the gang have opened the floodgates that the surge in magic is causing every tiny little spell to be amplified exponentially. Leading to like massive deaths and catastrophes. Like giant world-ending things happen every week because of some little spell. That is how much magic there is in the world. And meanwhile, in Fillory, which is in this other magical land, somehow has jumped 300 years into the
Mm-hmm.
future and is now ruled by an evil overlord known as the Dark King. So now the magicians have two worlds to save. There's also a third subplot about a literal theft of an entire library full of rare magical books. It leads to some great detective stuff, and it intersects with the other two storylines nicely. And overall, I really liked season 5, but there is kind of a sense that the show is on its last legs.
Mm-hmm.
Like while the show is still fun and witty, I feel like it's no longer as inventive or unpredictable in this season.
Right.
The writing for some of the episodes appear to be going through the motions. Even its famous annual musical episode felt a bit unimaginative. And all in all, while I'm sad that the show is over, I'm glad that it's able to go out while it still has some steam, you know.
Okay.
Like rather than overstay its welcome, like it's gone while it's still enjoyable, and it feels like season 6 may have worn out its welcome because I was getting a bit like, meh, like this show isn't as great as it used to be. It's still good, but it's not as great. And I like that they kind of left on a high. Sadly, though, the show ends on a cliffhanger because
Oh,
they didn't
man.
know they were going to be
Oh,
cancelled.
no.
So it's an extremely unsatisfying ending. But all in all, it's solid. So I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
Fair.
Okay.
Yeah, but that is like a huge jump down from like I usually rate the show 8, 9,
Yeah.
8, 9. So 6.5 is a big jump down lah. And primarily because I'm dissatisfied with the ending lah, but it's not really the show's fault lah, I guess. Next up, I'll be talking about a show called Brockmire. Man, I love cheating on this show because Brockmire is not a genre
Yeah,
show.
but what happened in Brockmire has caused it to be a genre show.
Yeah.
Really,
It's
yeah.
only acceptable now.
Brockmire is also in its last season. Not cancelled.
It's done.
It's ending on
Yeah.
its ending on its own free will. It's created by and starring Hank Azaria. Brockmire, if you don't know, it started out as a low-key comedy about a disgraced baseball announcer.
Yeah.
Its first 3 seasons were very grounded but extremely hilarious dramedies, kind of tracking the slow descent and heart-earned redemption of a selfish, self-destructive, substance adult asshole.
Self-hating.
Self-hating, yeah. It's a bit of a BoJack Horseman
In a way, yeah.
story-ish. But this fourth and concluding season throws a huge curveball in its final inning by jumping to the year 2030. The world is now, it's 2030, not so far away, but far enough. The world is on the verge of apocalypse thanks to climate change, riots, wars, plagues, and food shortages. So nothing quite different. But Brockmire himself is actually doing pretty well. As we saw in season 3, he's overcome his addictions. He's made great strides to become a better human being to himself, and he has the full support of his friends. And season 4 sees him as a fairly responsible human being and doing very well. But he unexpectedly finds himself as a father to a Filipino girl. This is kind of a callback to season 1 because in season 1 he told a story about how he went to Manila. He went to Manila for 3 years, did a bunch of heroin, and doesn't remember a thing. So apparently he had a daughter who is now fully grown, who comes to visit him in America after her mom dies. So now he has a daughter. He also finds himself as a new commissioner of baseball, tasked with reviving a dead sport. Baseball attendance is already low now, but attendance in 2030 is terrible. Mostly because, and get this, it's because the weather is so uncomfortable due to climate change that people don't want to sit outside for 5 hours anymore. And one of the best things that I've seen this show do is that most of the top baseball stars are abandoning the sport for cricket. Like they're going to India to play professional cricket, which is apparently super lucrative today, or in 2030, I guess. It's a radical swing, but it's still a home run because it has like all these filthily hilarious jokes, sneaky poignance, and Hank Azaria's acerbic wits is all there. And what I really loved about Brockmire is that Brockmire has always used baseball as a metaphor for the human condition, like the romanticism of America's favorite pastime, representing people who cling to old ways, unwilling to change, like Brockmire was in the first 3 seasons. And this final season uses it as a metaphor for social commentary. On paper, that amount of context and setup, plus you have to have the character continuity from previous seasons, sounds like it would threaten to overwhelm Brockmire. And honestly, sometimes it does teeter on being too busy, especially for an 8-episode season. It's gone from character study to sci-fi allegory now. Yet the show keeps the ship steady by committing to the theme of dragging obsolete or obstinate institutions into the future. That's what Brockmire is trying to do with baseball. He's trying to drag it into the future, kicking and screaming. Brockmire knows that baseball must evolve in order to survive, which not only means changing the mechanics of the game, but also the entire apparatus around it. Like there's the owners of the sport, right? A group of amoral billionaire team owners running the game, the distrustful players union, both of whom are deeply disinterested in reform. And it's a potent analogy for the uphill battle of progress in society. All meaningful change demands a systemic reframing of the world, and it's an inherently frightening notion to anyone comfortable with the status quo. But the status quo has gotten us into some deep shit, whether it's in terms of climate change or in terms of the politics that we live in. Lah. So through this lens of baseball, once again, and through the lens of a backdrop of an apocalyptic America, so it's Brock Meyer is able to like really delve deep into all these issues while still being a comedy. It isn't merely an avenue for dark humor at the expense of our current culture. It's a harbinger of things to come if we refuse to adapt. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And through seasons 1 to 3, Brock Meyer learned the way that he learned the hard way that he had to change to be better, right? And now he's teaching us and baseball how to do the same. The final season also finds creative ways to reunite Brock Meyer with like characters from all 3 previous seasons. It uses them effectively to render this near future sci-fi landscape with richly drawn emotions from the past. It maps everyone's growth, relationships, and character arcs very well. And most importantly, the show is goddamn funny, man. Brock Meyer is hilarious. Even if it didn't try to do this dystopian aesthetic thing, it would still be one of the funniest shows on TV on a line by line, scene basis, pound for pound. It's one-liners move at fastball speed, man. And the show has a sharpened political conscience now that's only made them land harder. So it's such an unexpectedly genre way to end what has easily been one of the best TV shows of the peak TV era. So I'm giving this a 9.5 out of 10.
Damn,
super high rated.
Nice.
Yep. If you guys have not seen Brock Meyer, please go watch Brock Meyer. It's not genre, I know, for the first 3 seasons, but the 4th season is. But you should watch it anyway. One of the best dramedies out there. I'm going to quickly run through the last few ones. Next up is The Letter for the King. It is a new medieval fantasy series from Netflix about a teenage squire and his friends who travel across several kingdoms to deliver a secret letter to the king. This fantasy series is based on a Dutch novel, and I seriously can't imagine that the book could be any more forgettable or generic than the show. The Letter for the King may have made an okay 90-minute movie, but it gets stretched pretty thin across 6 episodes. It's very dull and lifeless, and it's aimed at adolescent viewers, but regardless of age, whether you're 5 or whether you're 50, you'll be 100% bored by this. This is a 1 out of 10. Do not watch this. Next up, I'll be talking about a show with a very interesting premise, Motherland Fort Salem. Motherland introduces a world in which witches were not persecuted in the Salem witch trials. Instead, they became the backbone of the American military, creating a matriarchal society where women are in power. The show specifically focuses on 3 young women undergoing basic training in combat magic and follows them into their early deployment when a crisis emerges. It's an interesting premise, but unfortunately, it's very, very bad. The writing feels like a Divergent knockoff, which itself is a knockoff of other teen dystopias like Hunger Games, and all that.
Yeah.
The tone is uneven, unsure whether to be a super serious, super dark Homeland type show. It kind of wants to be Homeland sometimes.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it wants to be Sabrina.
Ayo.
So
the conflict there.
So I know, it's so weird. It's like they can be like there's a magical terrorist and it's like 24, it's like Homeland, like Carrie Matheson kind of shit. And then the next scene there's like an orgy in a high school. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. The tones do not mesh at all. The mythology is confusing, the reveals are hard to follow, and the dialogue is so bad. And at its best, the series is wildly ambitious and it can be gorgeous. There's like flying drug trips and strength and enhancing orgies. Apparently, orgies is something that witches do to get power. But it's this marriage between like military and goth motifs and high school drama is so not congruent. It's a 4 out of 10.
But such an interesting premise, though.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Like if you told me this is like Homeland meets Sabrina about America that is run by witches and their military is based on combat magic, I was like, that sounds interesting. But it doesn't quite work. I think Isa watched this a bit also, right?
I caught the first 3 episodes. But just okay. Because the premise is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
oh man, I couldn't. Like after the 3rd episode, I can't even remember what was it. There was a particular point in the middle of the episode. I was just like, nope, I'm done. Like I can't. Like it just. It doesn't know what it wants to be, right? Like I think as great as the premise is, like you need to kind of stick to one thing.
Yeah.
And I think if they did the whole Homeland thing, I would be totally into it.
Yeah,
for sure.
man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought so too. Yeah. And next up, very quickly, I'll be talking about Vivarium. Vivarium is a new sci-fi thriller starring Jesse Eisenberg and Imogen Poots. They are a young couple looking for the perfect home. That's when a strange real estate agent takes them to Yonder, a mysterious suburban neighborhood of identical houses. The couple are creeped out by it and try to leave, but when they try to exit the labyrinth-like housing development, each route takes them back to where they started. So they find themselves stuck in this homogeneous suburban nightmare of flavorless food, and where even the cloud formations are uniform. Soon, even like some stock delivers a baby to them in a cardboard box. And the baby grows with uncanny speed into a human child, adding to their burden in this residential prison. So yes, this is the kind of the unthined depiction of the suburbs as a soul-sucking nowhere zone, this
Mhm.
time with an extra dose of anxiety and despair, thanks to the thankless task of child rearing. So you can, like, if you can look past the obvious and very derivative metaphor, Vivarium has its moments of effective Twilight Zone-esque creepiness. The kid, for example, is a sociopathic parody of a normal child, screaming at random intervals and parroting its new parents in an unsettlingly adult voice. So there's this baby with an adult voice.
Oh, good
Um,
God.
the trouble is, right, like the metaphor has kind of been done to death, don't you think?
Yeah.
Like, oh, the suburbs are like uniform and soulless, etc. Yeah, I get it. Domestic life is bland. Parenthood can ruin romantic relationships, and feeling stuck can bring out the worst in couples. Yeah, so the whole thing kind of works for what it wants to be, but it's just so derivative. So I'm giving it a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
Okay, finally for quick hits, I'm talking about Trolls World Tour. Trolls, amazingly, of all the movies released on VOD in the COVID-19
Mhm.
age, right? This sequel to Trolls broke the record for weekend and opening day digital rentals.
Damn.
Wow.
Trolls World Tour was and is still the number one title across all major on-demand platforms. It's number one on Amazon. It's number one on Comcast. It's number one on Apple, Vudu, Google, YouTube, DirecTV, Fandango. It is, and it has been number one for like a month and a half now. It's crazy.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Like Trolls has made more money than the first movie Trolls, which opened to 100 million. So it's crazy that they did this on VOD, and it kind of a bit spells doom for cinemas, to be honest, because this did so well, and it just goes to show that theaters might be in trouble, if distributors decide to cut out the middleman, but onto the movie itself. Oh, by the way, I do have to say that Trolls in 1 week, right, surpassed Avengers Endgame's entire on-demand sales.
Well, to be fair, everybody had watched Endgame already, lah.
Fair enough, but everybody also wants to rewatch Endgame.
Yeah, but the number should be lesser, lah. People who want to rewatch Endgame.
Also,
True.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kids and parents who are desperate enough to buy
Yeah.
for their kids.
Fair enough. Okay, so Troll stars Anna Kendrick and Justin Timberlake. It's a sequel to the, obviously, as mentioned, the 2016 DreamWorks musical hit. This time, the Trolls discover that they are but one of 6 different troll tribes scattered across the different lands. And each tribe, right, is dedicated to a different kind of music. So there is the funk tribe, there's the country tribe, there's the techno tribe, there's the classical tribe, there's the pop tribe, and the rock tribe of Trolls. So the story involves a member of hard rock royalty, Queen Barb, played by Rachel Bloom, who is aided by her father, who is played by Ozzy Osbourne, who wants to destroy all other kinds of music genres and let rock reign supreme. It has the fate of musical diversity at stake. That is the stake of this movie, lah. As Poppy and Brunch, the trolls played by Anna Kendrick and Justin Timberlake, set out to all the other troll lands and try to unify all the genres against rock, who is looking to outstage them all. And what I can say is that, like, I think the premise is amazing. Like, speaking as a music journalist who has spoken to so many like hard rock elitists, right? This feels so believable, and I think that kids will probably be tickled by the slapstick humor and the whimsical dance numbers, but adults like me, especially the adults who are into music, I was not expecting to like this, but what I got was a very fun, creative movie with a pretty big message about musical diversity, and even monoculture versus multiculture. And look, like, it's a trolls film. It's not high art, lah. It's the narrative is flimsy outside of the musical numbers and the amazing premise, but I promise you it's worth a watch. It's 6 out of 10.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Okay.
Dude, man,
Alright.
I did not expect enjoying Trolls World Tour, but I did.
Yeah.
I did. Love the premise.
Still cannot beat our
Now,
Paddington 2.
dude, Paddington 2 is like the best movie of
The
the
year.
last decade.
Yeah,
so
the last decade, okay.
that year.
Yeah.
I think like if I ever came out with a list of like the top 100 movies of the 2010s, Paddington 2,
It's up there, lah.
it's in top
Yeah.
3 lah. It's in top 3 for sure. I'm not sure whether it's number 1,
Mm.
but there's a reasonable argument to be made that Paddington was the best movie of the last 10 years.
All right, man. I'm down with that.
All right. Next up, let's talk about Ghost in the Shell SAC_2045.
Yes.
Did I get it
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so SAC stands for Standalone Complex, right? Which is the title, the subtitle that they've given for all the Ghost in the Shell franchise series since the original
Movie.
movie came out. Major Kusanagi, Bato, and gang are back.
Wait, hold on. Is this like a reboot or is it a continuation?
It's a continuation. There have
Oh,
been
okay.
Okay, before
Eight.
you start, right, Isa?
Yeah.
Doesn't the intro remind you of Westworld?
No, I was just going to get to that.
Okay.
It is almost exactly. I mean, it is so similar. It is so similar. Like the first episode when I saw it, the title sequence, right? Which has a great song, by
Yeah.
the way. Hits, you should definitely check it out.
All right.
It's very Westworld-esque, almost exactly. Some of the scenes, especially the hand one, Hadi,
Yeah.
that one looks totally like almost shot for shot, which I find interesting. But it's pretty apt, and I mean, clearly, Ghost in the Shell was the premier cyborg franchise, right, before Westworld even came about. But yeah,
I guess so, yeah.
yeah.
Although, right, I do have to say that Westworld was around in the 70s because Michael Crichton wrote the book then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, the look and feel of it. When you see the title sequence, you understand what Hadi and I are getting at. Like it's
Yeah.
very
Gotcha.
like it's too similar in my
Yeah,
opinion.
even down to
but-
the white color paint that they use.
Yeah, understandably so. But it's the year is 2045. Major Kusanagi and gang are back. But this time round, due to certain things happening, if you catch up with with the previous seasons, not really seasons, the previous iterations of Standalone Complex, because each of them have standalone seasons. You kind of understand that Major Kusanagi and the rest of the ghosts have left Public Section 9 and are now working as mercenaries. America has decided that the military-industrial war complex is now best applied as sustainable war, in which professional warmongers from every country wage war against each other, while to keep the world economy afloat, while keeping civilians and all out of the fray. So the Major and her team find themselves as war dogs in this new climate of the world, right? So the major conflict, which I felt came a bit too late, is the discovery of a new species of human that they call post-humans, right? Everybody has a cyber brain now. Everyone's connected to the network, but these post-humans have been, well, to simplify it, they don't really give you that much detail because like it's still very, very early into the story. But essentially, they have evolved to the point where their cyber brains are faster than even the best supercomputers available on the planet. And with
Oh, wow.
those cyber brains, they are basically superhuman. They're mutants, essentially. It is
Mhm.
X-Men meets Ghost in the Shell, essentially.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Production IG did an amazing job with the production value. I think it is easily one of the most impressive and most polished anime productions that have come out in a long while. Just the attention to detail and even the little things like the way that they do the lights and the reflections off the ground and like the shadows and all of that is pretty mind-blowing. Of course, the original voice casts are back, which kind of lends a kind of familiarity to the whole season. Um, all in all, okay. So it's the action pieces are great, right? The action is great. I think the music is great. The acting is on point, and like it's very hard to fault a cast that have been kind of working together on the same as the same characters for almost what 1.5 decades now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the my main issue was pacing, right? You don't the first 6 episodes of this season, and there's only 13 episodes, mind you, is basically a bit of world building and a lot of action set pieces, right? Getting the
Okay.
team together where they're at and kind of like picking off where they left off with the last kind of standalone complex. I didn't feel that that was necessary, not 6 episodes long of necessary. The seventh episode is a standalone filler episode with Bato in a
Wow.
in the midst of a bank heist committed by octogenarians. It's hilariously funny. I really enjoyed it. Because it is so in character with what you imagine Bato to be.
Yeah.
But again, that is another episode out of what is a very short season already. You
Yeah.
only get to the fact that post humans exist in episode 8, which only gives you 5 episodes, right? And then
Oh.
from there, you don't even focus that much. You don't even focus that much on like a particular post-human and kind of like pursuing them, because now the new section 9 is in charge of hunting down post-humans all over the world. There's some political intrigue involving the fact that Japan's new prime minister is actually used to be American and now is a Japanese citizen. And like America, you meet this weird NSA agent that looks exactly like Agent Smith from The Matrix, and who
Oh
also
wow.
he's also called Agent Smith, and it's pretty ridiculous. Uh
Okay.
yeah, so I mean, like there are these little things that would have made like a great kind of like season a bit like I don't know if I should take you seriously.
Mm.
Yeah, and it becomes a bit of a procedural after that. Some of the themes though, and I think this is what is most important for me for any sort of uh Ghost in the Shell uh, um, entry, is that it asks some very interesting questions. Like in the age where technology is indistinguishable from our physical abilities, right? Or they're so it's so integrated. Like, what does it really mean to be human, right? And that's something that the original movie already kind of like delved into. But
Mm.
this new Ghost in the Shell sacrifices a lot of that scenery chewing, kind of like existentialist pondering for a lot more action set pieces,
Action
which
figures. Yeah.
is fine. And I think it works. But at the same time, I do kind of miss that.
Mm.
The whole idea that everyone is kind of connected to a network setting also allows for these really bizarre kind of virtual reality, augmented reality scenes, right? That border on fantastical, and it's pretty interesting. I do feel like, as far as I know, that this is only going to be the first season of this particular run.
Oh
So I
wow.
am looking forward to more. The cases that they have taken up so far are very interesting and very kind of disconcerting in the manner in which, like, what are the post-humans trying to do, right? The general consensus is they want, to see the established order kind of fall and like establish a new world where post-humans are at the top. But apparently there are only 14 of them. So
Oh.
like, what is that? And then diff- all of them have like different kind of motivations based upon the people who they were before they became post-humans. And there's one particular, the last arc, right, is about a high school kid who becomes post-human and struggles with his ability to um he struggles with his identity. He was already struggling as a teenage high school student, right? He was kind of reserved and a bit of an otaku. And
Yeah.
then now the fact that he is no longer even human anymore, right? And how that feeds into his motivation and stuff like that. It was a fascinating kind of character study that they managed to do pretty succinctly in like 2 episodes. So that wasn't too bad, but it ended oddly. It felt a lot more like a 24 episode season cut into half. Still highly
Oh.
recommend it. I'm gonna give it a 7, just
7.
for the
Okay.
sheer, yeah, just for the sheer like production value that they are bringing to the table, and the fact
Mm-hmm.
that I think by and large it stays very true to what you are expecting from a Ghost in a Shell entry to the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, that's pretty much it.
So mixed feelings lah.
I mean, it's not great. It's not perfect. I mean, like
Okay.
the original animated movie is a classic. It's a work of art, right? That is
Yeah.
held by many to be, one of the greatest anime or animations ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the quality of it, and like for that time, it was groundbreaking. So there's a lot to live up to, and I think like different standalone complexes over the years have done it to varying degrees of success. I think
Right.
like this new entry here coming off the back of ScarJo's version
Okay.
of Major Kusanagi is a little different, right? And clearly like they realize that today's audience isn't going to be as kind to scene chewing and like
Ah.
existential pondering as other people, so they are taking a slightly different approach to that. There
Mm.
aren't as many like long monologues or like staring out into the ocean. There aren't as many
Mm.
like Major Kusanagi like diving in the water. Like there aren't as
Oh.
many of those scenes, but it's still an incredibly beautiful anime to
Mm.
watch, and the action set pieces are kind of sick. They're kind of mad, like John Wick level kind of like
Nice.
coordination, which is really, really quite a joy to watch. So it is something different, but something at the same time a lot of the same, and I think it's worth a watch. So it's a 7 from me.
Awesome. Okay. And we're gonna wrap up this episode with the pull list. This month I'll be talking about a series of novels called the Wayfarers series.
Hmm.
It's written by Becky Chambers. It's a series of novels that is very rare in science fiction. It's the rare sci-fi universe that dares to imagine a hopeful future for humanity. In a real world that already feels like a dystopian future, it's really beautiful to find something this warmly written and warmly optimistic. Chambers writes sci-fi about about far future humans who've taken to the stars.
Hmm.
Her work is kind of influenced by Farscape and Firefly in that it trends towards a galaxy of rusty, beaten up spacecraft and wisecracking opportunists
Hmm.
more than the gleaming ideals of the Star Trek franchise, for example. Um, where there are too many other sci-fi writers that have taken the scuzziness of universes like Chambers and written stories that are similarly scuzzy. Chambers writes books about how people and the aliens who love them take care of each other in a world far bigger and far weirder than our own. Chambers' three novels, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, A Closed and Common Orbit, and A Record of a Spaceborne Few, are all set in the same universe where humanity made it out to where other intelligent species lived and soon found themselves near the bottom of the galactic political order.
Mm.
It's kind of a recurring gag throughout the books that species think that humans have a horrible smell. Yes, we are part of a galactic governing order, and no, nobody gives a shit what we think. It's a refreshing change from the human-centric spin of most spacefaring sci-fi.
Yeah.
And even though all three books have different human protagonists, they're all scraping to make the most of lives in which they're often looked down upon. You can read the three novels in any order, but I recommend reading them in the publication order if you want to see Chambers develop as an author.
Hmm.
She gets better as it goes along. In the Wayfarer series, human beings wrecked the Earth at some point in the 21st century because, of course we did,
Hmm.
and then started sending expeditions into space in hopes of finding something else. The experience with a planet destroyed by our greed has made humanity nicer, actually, sure, but also less prone to conflict in general. A thing
Mm.
that holds us back in some ways. So if the rest of the galaxy decides that we smell bad, we are too polite to call them on it. Essentially, Earth people have turned into Canadians. Um, we're just nicer overall
Yeah.
because we've learned from our mistakes,
Yeah.
so it's all about it focuses a lot about on interpersonal relationships,
Hmm.
uh, while they may be caught up in galactic events at various points in the story or in their lives, but like their relationships and loves are more important than all these big things going on in the world or in the universe. Some of it are like road trip novels with multiple point of view characters interacting across many disparate cultures and species. It's intensely humane and positive, even as it acknowledges that darkness does exist. It's all beautiful, like it has so many amazing interplanetary adventures with wonderful characters and fun discoveries. It has like cool descriptions of futuristic technologies and neat spaceships, and if you want to read more positive, diverse sci-fi stories where characters are supportive of one another and grow through relationships and grow through found families, then you'll find them in Becky Chambers's Wayfarers series. The stories are also meaningful. It's a bit like I don't know, how do I find, like, a TV allegory would be more like The Good Place or Steven Universe. It has that kind of vibe lah.
Interesting.
Instead of huge battles and guns blazing and blood spattering, Chambers offers intelligent, quiet storytelling that is as fun to read as it is moving. At the heart of the Wayfarer series are the remarkably well-crafted interpersonal relationships between humans and aliens from all walks of life. Her ability to place you in the world as though you're sitting there having dinner in the spaceship garden with your new friends is nothing short of magical. And personally, I feel like this is kind of what Picard should have been. Instead, we already reviewed Picard last, so I'm not getting back into it lah. Yeah, so I just felt like Picard was like Deep Space Nine for teens. Who cursing means that we are serious and adult.
Picard
Anyways, just to be clear, yeah, so many times in episode. Just to be clear, I'm not knocking sci-fi that is dark or action-packed or more traditionally a hero story. A lot of great stories and books and shows and films fall into those categories, but that's just the thing. There's so many of them, but there's so few things like the Wayfarer series, which makes it feel like a beautiful breath of fresh air in the genre. So I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, and do pick up all of Becky Chambers' books. You can buy it on Amazon if you want to. Yeah. All right. Before we talk about what we're going to talk about, next month, should we announce that next episode is actually Hardy's last with us?
It'll be my last episode.
Yeah. Genre Equality 30 is a can't miss because it's Hardy's farewell.
Lucky
episode.
it's not named like Hard Hits, where if I leave then doesn't make sense.
I will just have to find another hard then.
Yeah.
Or I asked Shafiq change his name now. Anyways, it is Hardy's farewell episode, so it's very sad. But we will be talking about some of Hardy's favorite shows, such as Star Wars
And
Clone Wars,
Westworld.
And Westworld. Yes, I have a lot to say about Westworld. I think it is just another version of
It
Devs
is, right?
this season.
Yeah.
When you all were talking about
Yeah.
Devs just now, the whole time I was like, isn't that Westworld?
Yeah, like Rehoboam
Rehoboam,
is
yeah.
basically Devs. Just very different approaches,
Yeah.
It's if you take the same concept and take two different filmmakers, how they look, and this is a Nolan story,
Yeah.
whereas Devs is a Garland story. Obviously, Hardy and Isa are big fans of Star Wars Clone Wars, and apparently the season has been great, right?
Yeah, it's been great.
I haven't caught
Nice.
up yet, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay.
Awesome. We'll also be talking about Rick and Morty, which airs the final 5 episodes of its latest season next month. There is a new show by the creator of Rick and Morty called Solar Opposites that is debuting just a few days after Rick and Morty. Bizarre. There's a lot of other bizarre things that I want to talk about, but I don't want to kind of spoil it. There is a movie called Butt Boy that I'm kind of dying to talk about. It's a story about someone who likes to put things up their butt as a sexual fetish. But okay, this is a short premise. But one day he goes
No
too
pun
far,
intended.
and then he starts kidnapping. And then he starts kidnapping children and putting them up his butt, and
What?
then they disappear. And then we shift to like a detective who's trying to find these kids. So it's like shot like a David Fincher movie, but it's about a guy who stuffs kids up his butt. It's pretty insane.
Okay. All right. I'm down.
So yeah, I'll be talking about that in quick hits. And I saw, like, if you're free, can you talk about She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, the final ever season actually?
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I'll take that.
Nice. Yeah. We'll be back next month, guys. But till then, do remember to stay home. If you're under lockdown, please obey all the rules in your local area. Don't be irresponsible.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, we're all being very good boys here because we are recording remotely. We're not meeting.
Yeah.
We are trying to be as we're trying to adhere to social
Yeah, man.
distancing.
Doing quite a good job.
So
in it.
stay
Yeah, man.
safe. Wash your hands. Wear your mask.
Wash your hands. Yep, indeed. And I've lots to say about Westworld, by the way. I've not enjoyed the last couple of episodes.
All right, we will talk about it more.
Okay, we'll get to that. Yeah, we will.
We'll talk about that more. Yeah, and also, of course, like it's Hardy's final episode, so definitely tune in. He'll say goodbye and he'll give some parting thoughts.
All right.
Yep.
Till then, you'll hear Hardy one more time, but till then,
I'm Hardy.
Hidzir.
I'm Isa.
Goodbye, guys.
Ciao.